What's up, Mortgage Coach community? Dave Savage. I'm interviewing Craig Strent. What's up, Craig?
Good morning, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing good, buddy. Thank you for making time. I am doing this interview live out of LA, California. I don't have internet, so I'm relying on the data of my AT&T iPhone. I only bring that up, community, just to make the point, guys, you can do video anywhere and everywhere. You know, Craig and I are going to do this Zoom interview, and I'm on an iPhone. Craig, you're in your office, right? You got a desktop?
I am.
Cool. So the purpose of this interview is I'm trying to get clear on what it means to be a black belt mortgage advisor with Mortgage Coach. This is the second interview I've done under this project, you know, defining what it means to be a Mortgage Coach black belt. First one was with Greg Anderson, who's done over 1,000 total cost analysis. Put a link down below. There'll also be a playlist called MC Black Belt Interviews. This is number 2. So Craig, I think you probably know this, but you've done over 2,500 total cost analysis. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and we should say my team has done over 25 because we break up the responsibilities in terms of the total thing. But yes, my team has done over 2,500, which is basically myself and my amazing longtime colleague, Amy Bell.
Yeah, well, you guys do a great job. And just for the community, in case they haven't listened to past interviews, they don't know who you are. You are the leader of a company that, how much business does your company do on a monthly or annual basis?
Well, it's a little skewed right now in an amazing refi market, Dave, as you know. Company last year did about $600 million, and this year we're on pace for almost $1 billion.
Wow. And then you are also the leader of a team. And what do you, I think you usually do, like, I think past couple months, 20 loans a month, maybe on pace for 25 this month?
Yeah, in the current refi environment, that's what I'm pacing, correct. Outside
the refi market, when it's just your core financial planner, purchase, you know, your core business, what do you average?
Yeah, I mean, so as you know, I'm CEO of the company as well as, sorry about that. I'm CEO of the company as well as an originator. So I do a lot of things, including my origination. Last year, my origination volume was 50 million, and that's mostly financial advisor business and repeat client.
So just take note, everybody, this guy gets all of his business from past customers and financial planners. So that is his strategy. And there's a lot that could be learned. There's a number of interviews I've done with Craig. I still want to do more interviews, really unpacking how he's getting business from financial planners in today's market. But this interview is about going from white belt mortgage advisor to black belt mortgage coach. So Craig, I first want to outline where I'm at today, and then I want to get your feedback on it. And then I do want to get into a mortgage strategy. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I've come up with what we call the transactional triangle, and every loan officer does it. The triangle is monthly payment, interest rate, and cash to close. And that is the data that they give a family with a fee worksheet. And I think the minimum criteria to go from I'm a mortgage advisor is a star, and I'm calling it the Mortgage Coach star. And the 5 points of the star are monthly payment, interest rate, cash to close. But the other point of the star is cost over time. So, you know, you've got to look at different cost structures, different options over different periods of time. And then you need to have a strategy. You know, it could be prepaying the mortgage. That's not usually the strategy that you recommend. Usually you recommend investing the difference with your financial planner. But you know, those are like you are not a mortgage planner. You are not a mortgage advisor if you're not delivering those 5 data points. So first of all, how do you like that triangle? How do you like the star? And do you think I have the 5 points of the star right?
Well, I think I think the triangle that you're referring to, Dave, is the critical information that customers ask because they don't know what else to ask. Everybody that calls you wants to know the rate, the payment, the closing cost, the cash to close. Those are sort of the basic questions that you're going to get. And those are sort of the basic questions that most loan officers are prepared to answer and are leading with. And I think those are obviously critical. But I think beyond that, as you move into the star, as you said, there are other things that are there. And I think a big piece of that, for me, at least in the way that I work with my clientele, is how does this mortgage fit and complement your financial plan, long-term and short-term? So not just looking at the mortgage in a vacuum, but understanding what you're actually trying to achieve, asking questions like, what would be the ideal outcome of this mortgage for you? What would you like this mortgage to do for you long term? So asking some other questions that might unpack some other things that could then inform the structure of the loan. So I think that's sort of a little bit beyond, certainly beyond the triangle, and it's maybe another point on the star if you want to go with that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of concepts that go into being a mortgage advisor, and you just covered one of them, which I got this acronym from the Challenger Sale, where you tailor, teach, control. Although I like to, it's questions, ask great questions. You have not shown up as a mortgage planner and a leader if you didn't get the family to think of things in a different way. Like if they're like, whoa, I never thought of my mortgage like that. Goal's not been achieved. So I think that's kind of where you're going with it, is like the goal is to enlighten. The family meets with you with a perspective, thinking they know what they want, and they leave going, wow, after that conversation and that meeting, I never thought of my mortgage so strategically. And Craig, I trust him. I like him. He's super smart. And I'm going to be able to build wealth with real estate faster because I met with Craig. I mean, is that kind of where you're going with it?
Yeah, I mean, a great example is somebody who comes in these days and is saying they really, rates are low, they want a 15-year fix, they really want to pay their mortgage off as quickly as possible. And I see they've got 2 kids they brought with them in the lobby, and I ask about the kids outside there and their college savings and their 529 plan, and I see that they're not even remotely funding it at the level that they need to. And here they all want to throw additional money at their mortgage, and their plan is to get their home paid off by the time the kids go to college, only so they can turn around and get an equity line to pay for it, pay me to borrow their own money back. So things like that. And you know what? I don't fault people for that. They're just not thinking that way. And so it's our job, I think, to sort of look at the bigger picture and sort of, help inform and educate as to how the mortgage can actually be used to really solve a lot of long-term financial planning goals.
Yeah, no, you're so right. So I want to ask you another question. So those are like the 5 points of the star. And I'm not trying to make this star where it's all encompassing. And when I create the courseware of going from white belt to black belt, to any one concept has it all. I'm just saying, to me, it's a metaphor. Go from being a transaction-based loan officer that's delivering the triangle to every customer to delivering the star. And I personally like the star metaphor because it also aligns with something I learned from Nancy Duarte 10 years ago. And she's a designer in Silicon Valley that has written a couple different books that I've read, Slideology, Resonate, and she says what I learned when I went to her workshop, STAR stands for something they'll always remember, and she just said anytime you're giving a presentation, you want to be intentional about teaching them something that they'll always remember, and that creates a like this concept of enlighten people, but now you got to enlighten them at a level where they'll remember it for the rest of their life. And I think that's something you accomplished, Craig. And in just a minute, I want you to pull up and do that, go through your scenario. But before I do that, I want to ask you one more question. So I got the 5 points of the star. And then in the gaps of the star, I think in order to be a modern mortgage advisor, you need to use video. So by the way, if you want to be a black belt, you can be a green belt, you can be a brown belt, you can be a yellow belt, you can be a white belt. But if you want to be a black belt, you got to deliver the 5 points of the star. You've got to, and you don't necessarily need to use video with every client, but you need to know when to use video. You use live really effectively. So that's about like video, live, audio. The fact that it's an omni-channel presentation, the fact that you can send a link, you can text it, you can email it, and then options. You always have to deliver options. So those are the other, call it key concepts that fit into the gaps of the star. Any thoughts on that? Any impressions?
Well, I mean, certainly, I think in terms of if you're, talking about becoming a black belt, so to speak, as you called it, I think presentation skills and scripting are of paramount importance. And I have found that it's an absolute separator. You talked about being a transactional loan officer. I mean, that's a rat race. If you're competing on price all day long you know, you're just not going to build the kind of clientele you want over the long term. You're not going to build a loyal, referring, repeat business clientele over the long period of time. You're just constantly going to be, you know, competing based on rate and everything else in cost. And that's not going to be a fun existence for you, incidentally. Whereas if you're competing and you're really adding value as an advisor with scripting, the right questions, and presentation skills, I think that's a complete separator. Look, if two people are quoting the exact same rate, you and somebody else, and they're not going with you, that's a problem. And I think that the right presentation and using video is a huge differentiator. I find a massive time savings. A lot of times I don't even do, especially nowadays in a refinance market, I'm not doing a lot of Edge Lives and jumping on the phone people. I'm actually recording a video with the Edge Live highlighted, walking them through it and sending it to them. I'm also copying their financial advisor a lot, and they are generally blown away by that level of presentation, and they love it because they can watch it time and again. And obviously I get the notification, so I know when it's the right time to follow up. These are differentiators versus people saying, here's the rate, here's the cost, call me if you want to move forward. Like, that's not going to get it done long term.
Yeah, and I like to hear what you said, because I have one of the categories called Omnichannel. And an Omnichannel came from the retail industry, and it basically means that, hey, you can meet the customer where they want, and they can do business with you wherever they want. If they want to come into your store and do business, great. If they want to do it online, great. If they want a hybrid, like Nordstrom's has done a great job of this, where it's like, hey, I come into the store, oh, you don't have that, we'll ship it to you and you'll have it tomorrow. It's omni-channel, doing business, communicating the way you want, email, text, social, and that's part of being a black belt. Part of being a black belt is knowing when you're talking to a family and they want to do everything via text, you're a black belt if you could do that. Part of it is, in Craig's case, he gets business from financial planners. So I'm sure he's using an email because he wants to email the family, he wants to loop in the realtor, or excuse me, the financial planner, but he's meeting them where they want. And when he gives them that link and they click on it, if they're at their desk, they're getting a desktop experience. If they're at a mobile, they're getting a mobile experience. But he's delivering this advice experience in an omni-channel way. And if you want to be a black belt, you need to know when to do that. You need to know how to do that. And then you need to do that in every selling situation there is, whether it's a rate and term refi, which are happening a lot now, whether it's purchase options for a move-up buyer, whether it's getting a renter, you know, doing a rent versus own. Every sales situation, you need to be able to do this star. So Craig, let's real quick, you are the master at having the, I don't know what we want to call it, the 15-year conversation, or the financial planner, this conversation really. I mean, you work with financial advisors and you help people make a better decision. So if you don't mind framing your total cost analysis, then pull it up and walk us through it from a black belt perspective.
Yeah, and you know, I think a number of folks in the mortgage coach community, Dave, have seen this in a call we've done in the past in terms of 30 versus 15.
So a lot of people have seen it, but by the way, a lot of people haven't. There will be a link down below where it was a mortgage strategy interview, and all we did was interview on this strategy. But I'm doing this white belt versus black belt, and I want to have you walk people through it. I want to kind of distinguish what are the black belt moves here.
Sure. So here's a 30 versus 15 case study that I use. I use this in presentation with financial advisors, and I use this as well quite a bit with customers. And nowadays in refi markets, really in any market, it's very common that you get somebody saying, give me a, let me see what a 30 and a 15 looks like. I mean, I feel like that's apples and oranges. They're totally incongruent with each other. It's two completely different strategies to have a 30 versus a 15. Of course, I show it to the customer because you should always show the customer what they have now and what they're asking for, and then you can show them other items that you may recommend. So in this scenario, here's the 15-year fixed at 3.5 highlighted there. 30-year was an 4 1/8, 5/8 higher at the time that I did this. So you see a difference here. Now, obviously, the payment looks the same, and you'll understand why in a moment. I click on more info, and I go to the payment stream, and you see a difference here of $921. So essentially, the 30-year fixed rate loan is $921 cheaper than the 15-year fix. So the discussion with the customer is, look, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, understand that you're comfortable paying an extra $921 a month. And I also understand that you're happy that your desire is to pay your mortgage off in 15 years. There's two ways we can do that. One, we can go with the forced savings plan, which is the 15-year fixed option you might want to choose right here at 3.5 for $3,300 a month. We have another option. We have an option where you can pay your mortgage off in 15 years, but you can do it lump sum rather than paying it monthly, negatively impacting your cash flow and your tax deductibility. And maybe we could create some more wealth along the way. So what we do is we go to the reinvestment tab, and we see here in the reinvestment tab that if we take $920.93 and we invest it at 6%, now a lot of you are saying 6%, where am I going to get 6%? Who's going to give me 6%? All that. Go back, look at the history of the S&P 500 over a 100-year period of time, pick out a 15-year block in there, and you'll see what we're talking about here. And you could drop this number down, by the way, if you want. But I ran this at 6%, and look what happens. At year 15, the extra money, so they were comfortable with the extra payment, so they took the 30-year, got with their advisor, came up with a good plan, and their monthly mortgage payment went out automatically this way, and the $921 went automatically out that way for 15 years now, right? Year 15, what happens? Year 15, we have $267,824 saved, and our mortgage balance is $259,877. So if these borrowers, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we'll call them, want to pay their mortgage off in full per their original plan at year 15, they can do that. They can cash out this $267. They could pay off the $259. They could keep the $7,000 difference. You're welcome. And now their mortgage is paid off. They're probably not going to do that, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But forget about that financial implication. Let's talk about the 15 years along the way. Let's say that somebody gets sick, somebody loses their job, something happens. They have this big pile of money now outside of the home that's their safety and their liquidity available to them. And that's the super important takeaway here, is that, there's a great piece by Stephen Marshall on A Tale of Two Brothers that he put out years ago on a 30 verse 15, where somebody pays so much extra to the 15 and tries to pay it off, and then they lose their job, they got all this equity, they can't get a mortgage, they lose their home. The key tenets here is safety and liquidity, right? And then after that, rate of return. Now at year 15, you'll come back and look at this and you'll say, do you want to pay off your mortgage in full, Mr. and Mrs. Jones? Or do you want to keep this big snowball of $267,824 running downhill and build up some more? And there's another case study that shows what that looks like over a 30-year period of time. The important takeaway here, folks, is that they said they wanted to pay it off in 15 years. You're just showing them another way to do it. And your way gives them a better tax deductibility, the safety and liquidity, and potentially a lot more in asset accumulation over the long run. The only negative is they've got to have the discipline to make sure that money goes out the door the other way every single month.
All right. So Craig did so many smart things, and you notice he covered the whole star. He did the 5 points of the star. He knows how to add a video when it makes sense. He knows how to use the live experience when it makes sense. He focuses on the asset accumulation. You did something that I don't think I'll make it like part of the curriculum to be a black belt, but to be a grandmaster, you need to do things like this. But you'll notice he mentioned the exact dollar amount. A lot of loan officers mention things in concepts, but when he called out the actual dollar amount that they would have at the end of the term or at the end of his comparison, he said the actual dollar amount. And there's just value in that. You want to be an authority, a leader, an advisor. It's all about the details. Craig, anything else you want to call out as I'm kind of on this journey to define what's a black belt in advice? You're clearly one. Anything else you want to call out in this scenario? And then I have a couple more questions, and then I want to wrap this up. Anything you want to call out at this point?
Give advice that other mortgage people aren't giving. Ask questions that other mortgage people aren't asking. I used to have a list of questions on my screen, like what's your desired outcome for this mortgage? What does a perfect mortgage look like for you? What is it you hoping to get when we're all done here? So really making them call out. And sometimes they'll say, I want to make sure I get the best rate and terms. Great. What's the next most important thing to you? because everybody's going to say that. Right now, you know. So if my rates and terms are the same, does that mean if I'm better at this, you'd like to move forward? So having a sort of pre-closing verbal contract in place as well. And I think, understanding the financial advisor market, financial advisors for the most part act as fiduciaries. And if you don't know what that means, it means that they're required by law to act in the interest of the borrower. We don't have that fiduciary responsibility in the mortgage business, but we should. And you need to take that approach. You get so much power out of saying, you know what, I don't think it makes sense for you to refinance at this time. That is a huge thing to say to a customer, and they will refer their friends and family to you. Their advisor will notice as well. So I think taking the approach of knowing your stuff, get your certifications. If you don't have the backgrounds, it's not hard to get. There's amazing certifications for mortgage out there. Dave knows that I'm a big fan of the CMPS designation. I think that's a great one to have because you learn what you need to know. So get educated, get ready. Barry Habib years ago used to talk about getting your Series 6 and Series 7. Just understand the language and put yourself in a position to give good advice. If you do that, they'll feel like they're losing out by not going with you.
Love it, love it. So one thing that came out of this, and I don't want to go deep on it, but we need to have these black belt questions. And I know one question that I always advocate, evangelize, is asking people, how old do you want to be when your loans and your mortgage is paid off and you're debt free? And then based off your current situation, how old are you going to be? Now, in Craig's case, he's going to, they're going to say a number, and then he's going to help them look at it differently. Like maybe you don't want to have it paid off, but you want to have enough money in savings to where paying it off is a strategic financial planning decision. But at least you want to get them thinking beyond rate, payment, cash to close. You want to get them thinking on, would you want to be debt free? What is your next real estate investment? Do you want to, when do you want to buy your next house and why? Is it, I want a bigger home and that's my next real estate purchase? Or is my next real estate purchase a second home or an investment property? Remember guys, if you're a black belt at Mortgage Coach, the transaction is important. The triangle is critical. Those are table stakes, but helping people build wealth with real estate through smarter mortgage decision, that's the game you play. That's where you're a black belt. So if you have other black belt questions, put them down below. Craig, anything else you want to talk about in terms of this kind of journey I'm on? Any questions for me about the black belt process that I'm doing? Already closing thoughts for the community.
Yeah. My closing thoughts are that it's a hurdle sometimes to develop some of these skills, and that, you have to sort of, there's a great book my friend Caleb LeGrand gave me, which is, slow down to grow fast. And I think sometimes you just have to pump the brakes a little bit and learn how to use the software, learn how to do the presentation, develop your list of questions. And if you do that and you get your presentation set, that will go a really long way in the long term. So that's what I would say, Dave. I mean, those are the main takeaways: is certification, scripting, presentation, education, and knowledge. These are going to be huge differentiators that are going to help loan officers be successful for the very long term.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, Caleb is absolutely another black belt and a grand master at Mortgage Coach. I need to do an interview with him as part of this process. So guys, remember, we've got a lot of videos at our YouTube channel. This is part of my black belt interview series. If you want to grow as a mortgage advisor, I mean, all of our interviews are great, but the series that I did called Mortgage Strategies, which I think I don't even know what number I'm up to. It might be number 50. I know it's over 40, but the Mortgage Strategy interview series is just a great way for you to grow as a mortgage advisor. Because not only do you need to nail the star, but you need to do it in every selling situation. And there are a lot of strategies. So hey, Craig, thanks for making time for this interview. Thanks for all the value you bring to the community. I really appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, Dave.